Good morning, my dear students. Today we are going to talk about the crucial issue, which is time management. As you can see, how to make it on time and still have some social or family life, as you usually cannot have both, by the way. In other words, we will try to avoid things like that. We will try to avoid them. We'll try to learn the basic and more advanced techniques to plan your project and your time. We'll start with basic scheduling, and we will move on to some more complicated techniques, which are also used under some circumstances. Some of the things that we are going to talk about today are going to be useful during your exercises. So, well, to plan the time of the project is to prepare the schedule, which is crucial. And our approach is totally based on WBS technique. So first you need to have the description of your tasks, and then you try to prepare your schedule. The source of the information about the tasks is basically the manager of the tasks, so the leader of the people that are going to perform the task, but we'll talk about it in a moment. To prepare a schedule is just to put the task in an appropriate place on your timeline. Basically, this may be understood as the very basic schedule of each project. So you have a task A, you have task B, there are handover points, which means that you switch between the tasks, and finally also the task D is completed here, is going to be completed here, and this is a milestone. So as you can see, a milestone is something more important than just handing over a task, one task to the another. Okay. So a task, a working package coming from WBS, is basic part of each project, and this is what we already know. A handover point is the point where you finish one task and start a new task. Of course, there can be some delays between them, but it doesn't change anything. And often the teams change between different tasks, which is natural. A milestone is an important handover point. So it is after you have completed, let's say, a sub-project, so a big part of the project, and then you can move on to another part, to another tasks. And this is a basic indicator of the project execution, which means that not only the project manager would care about the milestones. This is the basic things that you need to report to somebody above you if you are a project manager. So also, let's say that the management of the company would care about the milestones. They wouldn't care about particular task, because the tasks are too small for them. But milestones, yes, they do care about milestones. So the job of a project manager, in case of doing with time, is to prepare the right schedule, is to apprise the task between the managers, and to take care about the milestones, of course, because somebody else also takes care about that, and to avoid micromanagement, which is paying too much attention to the unnecessary details, and of course to solve the problems if and when they appear. The basic tool to deal with the schedule is the Gantt chart. It is one of the oldest. It is easy to understand. It is easy to understand. As you can see it here. So you've got 4 tasks in this case and several weeks here. So task A is going to be completed after a week and a half. Then task B is you know, just a moment, and then task C is going to be completed almost by the end of the third week, and then you have task D. And here you've got a milestone, which means that, well, ABC are a great part of the project, and then D is also somebody different from all the other tasks. So this is how a basic Gantt chart looks like. It is easy, and it is extremely easy to understand, I would say. You can also use a Gantt chart not only to plan tasks, but also to control them, even without any computer. As you can see, you've got tasks here, and you've got weeks here, and say this task has already been completed, and some other task like this one is even ahead, whilst some other of the tasks should be completed and are not completed, as task K is an example of such a task. So it should be completed here, but it still is under execution, which makes it problematic. As you can see, it is very easy to interpret this this chart, and even without a computer, it would take like a second or so to understand what is going on and where the problems can be found. So you can imagine somebody a long time ago just drawing charts like that, and the high managers, just taking a look at them and knowing everything what is going on. So what works in favor of Gantt chart? Well, it is graphic and intuitive. It is basic, and it is transparent. Of course, it is based on WBS, which is crucial here, and it enables us not only to plan but also to control. But of course, it is not anything perfect. Okay, it doesn't show the interconnections between the tasks, nor it shows which tasks are, let's say, crucial and which are not. It doesn't tell us if any of the tasks can make the total project last longer. Okay, so no interdependencies, and nothing crucial can be shown here. So we are going to need something more. We are going to need something that actually shows the interdependencies and shows which tasks are crucial and which are not. In order to do so, we are going to use this graphic approach. So for us, this is a task, this is a beginning, the end of the task. This is a predecessor. So a predecessor is a task that necessarily needs to come before our task, and the successor is a task that comes after our tasks. If we know it, then we can draw an activity on node diagram like this one. This is for building our house. What you can see here is our total product divided into parts, and we can see that the parts of it are interdependent, because in order to pour your foundation, you need first to level your terrain. In order to start the raw state, you need first your foundation. After that, you can start this one, this one, this one, and this one. After you're ready with this one, this one, and this one, you can do this one, and after that you can begin with this one, this one, this one. So there are interdependencies. There are some tasks that must come before the other tasks, and therefore you cannot start the next task before finishing the previous one. Before finishing the previous one, and though interdependencies are shown with the arrows here. With the arrows here, as you can see, even a relatively simple project can be drawn like that, which makes it a little bit complicated, even though it's not so complicated. But what you can see here is something more than a Gantt chart. You can see the interdependencies, which means that, well, in the end you would be able to calculate how long the project is going to take, and what if any of the tasks takes longer than planned. This approach is also called a critical path approach. Well, the simple definition of a critical path is the longest path of the project. So if your estimated project is TE, then this is the length of the critical path. So we can divide all the tasks into critical and non-critical. The critical belong to the critical path, which is, self-defined. The thing is that if any of the critical tasks is delayed, then the total project is going to be delayed. If, on the other hand, any other task is delayed, then not necessarily the project needs to be delayed. If we wanted to see it, then we need to assume the length of all of the tasks, as you can see here, and we can make our own calculations. So these are, let's say, weeks. You can calculate on yourself and you can try to guess which task is critical. Please do it now. You can push spacebar or something. Okay, if you're ready, so let's take a look. This one is the longest. So this is also the critical path, which means that the total project is going to take like 1, 9 and so on. You can add everything and you could get the total length of the project. 26. So this is how long it is going to take. It is not that complicated. I mean, all the other paths like this one or this one are also important, but they are not critical. Only the critical path decides on how long it is going to be. Some other things are important. So if you take care about the length of the project, first of all, you do pay attention to your critical path. Of course, you cannot forget about all the other parts, because they may become critical one day. So you also think about it, think about them. But to make your project shorter, the first thing you do is to try to make your critical path shorter. Some phrases that we should know, that we should understand, is the slack time or time buffer, which appears in non-critical tasks. We can calculate them. So this is going to be the maximum prolongation of the non-critical tasks, for which still the project is no longer than before. And also we can speak about unhampered buffer, which is the maximum delay of a task that does not influence the starting time of the next task, because sometimes there are also delays between the tasks. Things like that may also appear. So there can be some time buffers inside your project, and sometimes you even need to plan them, let's say to be safe, okay, to have this buffer on your side. So how to plan the non-critical tasks? Well, it would seem natural to perform everything as soon as possible, because this way you avoid any unnecessary risk. On the other hand, we need to pay attention to all the tasks that are being executed. We need to control them. So the way to make this control smooth is also important when we plan. And also, sometimes the decisive factor is money, which means that we would prefer to pay later than before. So we wouldn't try to complete everything as soon as possible, because we wouldn't like to pay for the resources we need to complete those uncritical paths, because as you can see, if they are uncritical, even if we make them faster, it doesn't change the total length of the project. So it's up to our consideration. What can destroy our project in terms of having it done on time? Well, the potential factors come both from the critical and non-critical path. What can we do about them? Well, the basic technique is to try to put as many tasks as possible outside the critical path, because this way, if any of those tasks takes longer, it doesn't make the total project longer. But it's not that easy to do it all the time. So sometimes we can try to direct more resources to the critical path, or we can try to make the critical tasks shorter. Please remember that time is only one of the resources that we have at our disposal, and sometimes other things matter even more. And in the end, let's say that the cost of the project is the most important. If we take a look at this example, we can see that where there are different tasks to be executed here, and different number of workers that are going to be engaged. And as you can see, we start with 5 workers, then 10 workers, 12 workers, now nobody here, and then the maximum 23, also 5, so it doesn't look too good. I mean, you would have to switch the workers to tell them to go home, whatever. If you don't have anything else for them to do, it doesn't look good. So we could try to optimize this, and this way, this is still the same product. We are almost flat. I mean, at the very beginning and the very end, of course not, but we are almost flat here, which looks much better. But on the other hand, for the same project, the demand for the equipment changed, and then so it is not flat anymore. Is there a good solution? Of course there is. We need to decide what is more important or what just costs more. In the end, usually we use just calculation based on money to calculate which way is the best. Please also remember that some of the resources are not so homogeneous, so it's sometimes we make too many assumptions that something can be switched from one place to another extremely easily, whilst it cannot. And there's a thing called multitasking. Multitasking allows us to flatten the demand for resources because people can do different things. Okay. On the other hand, it is not that convenient. If you imagine a task that you start at the very beginning, you learn how to how to perform this task, and then you are faster and faster and faster. On the other hand, if you need to multitask, so you switch between different tasks, well, you learn, then you go to a different task. You learn, then you go to a different task. You learn, then you go to a different task, and so on. So multitasking is also not a good answer. It's not also not a good answer, so it's not always that easy to make everything work smoothly. People usually do not like multitasking. If you want them to switch from one product to another, it's not that a good solution. Simultaneous engineering, on the other hand, it's quite a good solution. It's based on several handover points. So let's say that you want to construct a building. Okay, so first you design the overall project, the overall structure of the building, and then you start to build, and in the end, while you are already building, you design the interior, and then you go to the interior. So so this is it. So this is it. This is what we can say sometimes works quite well. The other part of the lecture that we are about to begin now is to tell you about approaching the time planning in cases when you cannot be actually sure of a lot of things. I mean, where you can actually speak of more of chances than of actual deadlines. But still, there are important techniques. There are probability tools that you can use, and always a good estimation is much better than just guessing, and those techniques that we are going to use are PERT and GERT. Let's consider a situation like that. There is a probability of having each task completed on time, which is 50%. So if there are two tasks, the probability is, yes, 25%, but if there are 5 tasks like that, with the same probability per each, the final chance is, as you can see, 3%, which makes it even more interesting. So in case of PERT, we use this approach when we are not certain about the time of each task. The name comes from program evaluation and review technique, and it is probabilistic. And by the way, it was developed during the Cold War, and it is connected with the Polaris Fleet ballistic missile program, which was a way to use missiles going from the USA to, well, you know where and what to do there. Anyway, PERT can be used everywhere now, and it is used to estimate the probability of having a project completed on time, and it is nothing else. It is just that. In order to use PERT, you need to have 3 different estimations per each task that is included in your project: optimistic, pessimistic, and let's say the most probable. You get them from your task managers, experts, and so on. From a graphic point of view, it can be shown like that. So the optimistic is the shortest, of course, and the probability, the highest probability is here. So this is the most probable point. This is your expected time, which takes into consideration also the pessimistic case, and as you can see, in extremely pessimistic cases it can take much longer, which sometimes happens we know that things happen, so sometimes it can take so long that this is much longer, this is more than 2 times longer than your expected times, but the probability of it is very very low. We can calculate everything using mathematics, but what is important here is that when the difference between the different estimations is high, the variance is high, then we can assume that, well, actually we cannot be so short. We cannot be sure about our result. In case of the total time, well, this is just the sum of our estimated time of all of the tasks that are included into a project, and this time the distribution looks like that. This is a normal distribution, and the thing is that in case of a particular task it wasn't normal, and here it is. Why is that? Well, this is because some of the tasks can be completed shorter, faster, and some will be completed longer, but if there are plenty of tasks, it goes to normal. I mean, the shorter task can give more time for the longer tasks, so it looks like that. It looks just like that, and we can calculate everything using maths. We are not going to do it now, but the thing is that the computers can do it, and we can get some estimations from the computers, and this is what we do nowadays. This is what we do nowadays. We calculate the probabilities. What is bad about PERT? So this is an approach based on mathematics, for which we don't take into consideration the particular human factors that come into play, for sure. So it assumes that each task starts after the another, so it is a tool of calculating, not a tool of understanding people or nothing like that, as usual. But we can use it when we are more or less sure how long the tasks are going to take, and if we have some experience, and so if the variance between the optimistic and the pessimistic version is not that big, then, well, this technique can bring some interesting results. And also we can use PERT with Monte Carlo simulation, which is just performing a lot of computer simulations in order to get the final results that are quite reliable, because they take into consideration all the possible scenarios usually. About the human factor, some remarks about the human factor. So if you ask somebody to undertake a task, and this person needs to tell how long it is going to take, well, the response can be there can be different responses. If we assume that, let's say, that people tend to overestimate the time because they want to have more time to finish their tasks, if they do it just only by 10%, and if there are 5 persons like that, the total time that you get is going to be 61% longer. So it is going to, probably it will cost you losing the project, because nobody is going to agree on such a long project. So what can you do? Well, there are different techniques to deal with people. let's say that this one, you need to be brave to use it, because you tell your people to estimate the time, but you tell them, well, if you can do it, that's okay. If you don't, I will not blame you. Or you can take the estimations and divide them by 50% or something, and then add something to have your buffer. Or you can change the approach towards the planning, which is more like an art of scheduling. So the problem is, because the root problem is that people do not want to undertake any extra responsibilities. They do not want to promise you things they cannot keep and so on. So if you want them to be realistic, you need to use techniques like that. Try to think about it. So please remember that if the people knew that there is a time buffer, their motivation would drop, and they would take all the time. They would take their time and even more, as the students do with the time they have to prepare for their exams. What I can say, I think that the zeal of students is quite high at the very beginning of the semester, and then they have other things to do. By the end of the semester, somehow it goes up and up, and also drops. Unfortunately, it doesn't apply only to the students, but also to your team members. Please remember that. Please remember that. The other technique that we are going to deal with today is GERT. This is for R&D projects where you need to iterate. So when you need to do some things once more and once more and once more and once more. So there are some loops, and when there is a great difficulty of saying how long it is actually going to take. The name comes from graphical evaluation and review technique, and in GERT we do not assume that each task starts after the previous one is finished, so we can start faster, or the previous one doesn't need to be finished every time. You can complete the task plenty of times. The critical path can change, and there are different finish points for the tasks. So this is a graphic tool, so we use some approach to drawing the schemes like here, and we get something like that. It seems complicated, but the thing is that you have different paths, and depending on particular task, you go fast, you go farther, or you get back and you get back and you go farther, or you go this way and you go farther and you get back. So there can be many different results, and the thing is that you want to calculate the probability and the probable length of the project. You can do it, but considering all the possible scenarios. So you can use this mathematical approach, and you can also use Monte Carlo simulation. So using computer to calculate how long it is going to take. We should be cautious with this approach, as with any other approach, because this is just mathematics, and the human factor can change the final results. So to conclude, Gantt and critical path are basic, and we use them everywhere. Whilst PERT and GERT and Monte Carlo simulation are used for big complex project, for R&D project, but such projects do exist, so sometimes we also need to use those techniques. We don't need to be able to use them now, but the important thing is that we know that they exist, and then we can use, let's say, some professional software to deal with them. The thing is that in case of any method, after we have learned to use it, and if we are perfect from this technical point of view, then we need to start think about the human factor, which can change everything, which can complicate all projects, all and every project. Thank you very much.